Welcome to the special 2018 seasons of the Wealth Standard Podcast, celebrating life, liberty, and property. You are currently listening to Life Season 1.
Hi everyone, this is Patrick Donohoe. Welcome to the Wealth Standard Podcast. It is episode 3 of our 2018 Season 1, where we're focusing on the principle of life. So if you're listening for the first time, definitely go back and check out the first 2 podcasts. They are both on video and on audio. You can access it on YouTube and also iTunes. And definitely, if you like what you hear, the reviews are huge for getting the word out about the podcast, specifically this season. So go on to iTunes, give us a good review, take a picture, and we'll send it to us at info@paradigmlife.net, and we'll give you some goodies. Now, one thing I thought would be good is just to kind of review really the reason for the theme. So for the last year or so, I've been working on a book that's called Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. And this summer is really where I started to research a lot into the idea of life, liberty, and property, which was really conceptualized by a guy named John Locke, who was an English philosopher back in the late 1700s. And obviously we recognize as part of our vernacular, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness because of Thomas Jefferson's use in the Declaration of Independence. But, you know, it's one of those things where the actual saying itself is very well recognized, but the principles and understanding behind it isn't. So as I've studied it and I've really looked into each of those principles, that's where we came up with the 3 seasons that we're doing this year. The first season being life, which is focused on you as your greatest asset, and then liberty, which is the pursuit of freedom, or the pursuit of doing what you want to do. And so as it relates to financial planning and financial advice, everyone is really focused on retirement, which is the not doing or the stopping of doing. And so therefore, the pursuit of financial freedom and liberty is what the focus is going to be for Season 2. And then Season 3 will be the pursuit of property, which gets into the material world, not necessarily a real estate investment, but the material world and how that relates to your use of it to create abundance for you, your family. And it's going to be fun. I've really enjoyed the last couple of episodes, really with Garrett Gunderson being the first. We've also recorded number 4 with Ken McElroy, who is a Rich Dad advisor. Just an amazing individual. He's been so gracious with his time and his talents with what we've built here at Paradigm. And, it was awesome to see him in La Jolla. He was one of the speakers this past weekend. And we talked about just some things that really we both believe in regards to the potential of the human being, especially as it relates to the professional world. And then I just recorded earlier this afternoon the number 5 episode, which is going to be Neil Godfrey, and she is just an amazing individual. I got to tell you, it was an awesome interview, not what I was expecting at all. And she has written almost 30 books. She was one of the first executives at Chase Manhattan Bank, and she is a sharp cookie, believe me. And she right now is the chairwoman, I guess you could say, of the Children's Financial Network. And so we're gonna have a bunch of links up, but don't miss that episode. It's gonna be awesome. And also we're video. Obviously we're on Instagram too, but we're video. So if you guys want to check out the podcast live and in color, go to YouTube/Paradigm Life. All right. So today, what I thought would be good to talk about, and what I've been inspired to do, is something I spoke about at the event that I attended this past weekend, and it was primarily a real estate investment conference. And so Jason Hartman, who is a client of ours, really great friend, I'm also part of his mastermind group called the Venture Alliance. I've gotten to know him really well, and I understand his pursuits, his passions, and the principles that he believes in, which are very similar, if not identical, to my own. And we've been talking about doing an event together, and we finally pulled it off, and it was definitely a success. There was, I think, over 300 people there, and some of the discussions, some of the speakers, some of the people that were there were just amazing. So what I decided to teach there wasn't necessarily applicable to what Paradigm Life does, but it's something that I learned that I always think about, and it really changed the way in which I view myself, I view my professional life, and also my personal life. And it's called the mirror. mirror. Now, I first heard of this concept. It was actually a joint event. Garrett Gunderson was one of the participants in the event. But it talked about the financial statement and how the financial statement is a mirror of really the human being. And so if you look at the financial side of things, the income that you have, the money you've acquired, the assets you have, the liabilities you have, the expenses that you have, it all relates ultimately to a human being. And so what I want to do is really dig into what I would say the foundation of all financial life. I would say life in general, which is not money. It's not business. It's not a property. It's not an investment, but it is a human being and their potential to produce and create value for other people. And so I'll kind of go through my presentation a little bit, and I then give you some examples to bring it all home. But if you look at, so for those that don't understand necessarily financial statement, if you forget your accounting 101 course in college or in high school, a financial statement consists of two things. First, there's an income statement, and then second, there's a balance sheet. Now, an income statement has two components. It is income and expenses, and then a balance sheet also has two components, which is assets and liabilities. So if you really want to get a good kind of fundamental read into this, the book Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, as well as Rich Dad Poor Dad, give a great introduction into this whole the idea behind a financial statement. But as I've looked at it, the whole mirror side of things is something that I would say was a disconnect for me, especially as I was in college, getting into the professional life, my professional life, and it was the correlation between really a financial statement and what it is, and you as the individual. So this is how the mirror works. So the income that you receive is essentially based on the services that you provide to other people, and that is ultimately a byproduct of your experience, your knowledge, your specific expertise, and that's essentially what is paid for. If you're based on another type of income, it really doesn't matter. W-2 income, salary income, commission income, etc. It's because you've provided a semblance of value to somebody in which they gave you money for, right? Because they valued what you were providing more so than the money. Now, if you look at an employer-employee relationship, the employer, really they pay less than what the person that's providing the value is worth. Now, this is something that may discourage you, and you may think that employers are these cold-hearted. I'm not going to use a bleep word, even though you're here, Chunga. Just kidding. But it's one of those things where businesses are in the business. There's a tremendous amount of risk and energy and thought that goes into a business, and they're there to turn profits, to make profits. That risk needs to be rewarded, and so therefore, the hiring of people is done so in the way where you receive a benefit, you receive a service, and in exchange for that service, you provide compensation. But there has to be a differential there so that there's profit for the company. And so looking at that, though, you first realize that, wow, I'm not paid what I'm worth. I'm paid just a little bit less. So that should, I would say, rationally speaking, tell you that, well, if you provide something that's valuable and you're getting paid less than what it's worth, it's probably valuable to more people, but it's also something that you can add to. The value in which you're providing now is not necessarily the value you're going to provide tomorrow, but it's based on a choice, and that choice I associate with the balance sheet side of things, of what I'm going to call the human capital statement, which is the mirror of this balance sheet. So assets, the acquisition of assets, is a function really of your income as you're saving and as you're investing and as you're earning interest, but really the idea of an asset is when it comes to human capital, it is your experience, it's your network, it's your relationships, it's your certifications, it's your schooling, your formal training, whatever it may be. It's what you possess that is valuable to others and which they will pay for. Now, if you're not working, it doesn't mean you don't have any assets. It's just those assets are not being used by someone else. But what it should show, just as you can increase the assets of your balance sheet, you can also increase the assets assets in your human capital statement, that mirror. Now, how do you do that? Well, there's a million ways till Sunday, but I'll mention a few, and then I'm going to give you some examples. So the first thing I would say is, from my experience, I've met and done business with lots of business owners and people over the years, and there is no such thing as like a perfect organization, a perfect company, a perfect professional organization. There's always challenges. There's always flaws. But if you look at the world through the eyes of really an entrepreneur, the eyes of an intrapreneur, the eyes of an opportunist, these are any challenge, any difficulty, any pain, right, is also a sign that there's tremendous opportunity, because if there's changes made, right, then there's improvement. So what I would say is, as you look at the development of your assets, okay, you can continue to learn new things and discover opportunities based on these challenges, and you could potentially be the person that solves them. And how do you do that? First, you have to have that paradigm or perspective. But the second thing you look toward is, if you don't have the adequate skill set, if you're not able to figure out what the solution is, doesn't mean you can't. And that's what it comes down to: training. Now, it's interesting, you really look at the society in which we live in. If you go back, even 30 years, the access to information was so, maybe even 20 years, the access to information was so limited. In order to learn a subject, you had to go to, I was going to say Barnes & Noble. I'm not sure why that came to mind. I don't know when Barnes & Noble came about. You had to go to the library, right? You had to go to the library. The internet was very rudimentary at that time. And, in the library, you had to go through books. And what's the card system in libraries? The Dewey Decimal System, right? I mean, when's the last time you freaking heard that word? Jeez. Dewey Decimal System. Hashtag Dewey Decimal System. I wonder if there's a hashtag for that. It's probably not very popular. Anyway, Dewey Decimal System, and then that's how it worked. But right now, it's insane the amount of knowledge that is not just at your fingertips, but it's within the sound of your voice, Alexa or Siri, or what's the Google lady's name?
At Home. It's Google At Home.
It doesn't have a name?
I don't know what her name is, though.
It doesn't have a name?
No.
Oh, that's lame. All right. Okay, well, anyway, you have all of this information at your disposal, but it really comes down to the application of that knowledge, the application of that information. So I'll give you a couple examples. So I have some good friends, and they're kind of business associates in a sense, but they are highly trained executives, directors in the software industry. And I met them when one was at T-Mobile, one was at Microsoft, and they were really successful. I mean, high income earners. They'd done very well for themselves. They had been at previous companies, Amazon, Expedia, Washington Mutual, and a few others. But anyway, the idea is they received tons of training, tons of certification. They ran big teams, did big projects, had huge, what would that be? So 7, 8, 9-figure budgets. And, that experience, I would say, they even acknowledged the fact that they didn't realize that experience was applicable and valuable outside of those companies. But it wasn't until they started to look for opportunities for consulting, looking for opportunities, to share that information and get paid for it. Okay, were they able to leave? So once they were able to discover that, there's a lot that comes along with those type of positions. A lot of anxiety, budgets, deadlines, and so forth, goals, metrics, and it can be taxing, or especially over time. But they realized that they had this skill set that would be valuable to others on the outside, and they had built up, some good investment, some good cash flow. They're also all clients of ours, and they got to the point where they were able to. One was able to exit first, and they had consulting jobs where they were able to do services that they were doing previously, but on their own terms. And then the supplement was the cash flow from some of their investment. And then the second individual, a couple years later, was able to do the same thing. Because again, it was that connection between how can I take my skill set, what I've learned there, and apply that to the outside world. And I'm going to use another one. And then we'll get into the actual specific strategy itself, which is the topic for today. But I just wanted to make sure that there was good context. So the other one was actually this past weekend, and it was a great conversation that I had with an individual, and he was in the Marines. What are Marines called? Frogs? No, those are Navy SEALs. What are Marines called? Leathernecks?
Yeah, jarheads.
Oh man, you're gonna. Okay, all right. So he was a really cool guy. And one of our advisors here, Gary Pinkerton, who was a former submarine commander in the Navy and assistant to the Joint Chiefs of the Pentagon. He really hit it off with him. And Gary, I would say, is the embodiment of what I'm going to talk about, which is this idea that this guy, a really cool guy, was at this conference, kind of figuring out what to do with his life, because he realized that the government contracting, which was what he did after the Marines, but the government contracts and getting into that field, right? There's not a lot of upward movement, and he realized that, and he realized that this would be essentially his day to day, and he wanted more for himself, he wanted more for his family. And so we had a great, probably 20-minute discussion where we really, looked into the skill set that he was developing, not just in the Marines, but the skill set he was developing in the government contract world. And it was specific to importing and exporting. And so we started to identify, okay, how are the skills associated with what you've acquired in the military and what you've acquired throughout your career with this specific company that would be valuable to the outside world. And we started to go through, and we had just come out of this speaker. His name's John Burns, who is like the foremost statistician and forecaster in the real estate world, where he was talking about the demographic shifts associated with what was going on in the country, and how things were really expanding internationally, and so we were talking about that. And it was one of those things where if you can master a skill of law associated with importing and exporting, it's like most companies would find that hugely valuable, right? Because if you have these emerging markets, I mean, the stats show that in Africa there are more adults under the age of I think 30 than there are in the entire population of the United States, right? And very similar in China. China is actually getting to the point where they're consuming more than Americans with some goods and services. And so you have this kind of growing emerging market world, and that's all outside of the United States, and that's where tons of opportunity is. But yet sometimes we get so narrowly focused, and we have just this perspective that the way in which we're living right now is all that there is. But the conversation we had really related to, okay, who are some companies that have goods and services that would be valuable to those that live in India, those that live in China, those that live in these emerging markets. And it was a fascinating conversation because he started, you could see the light bulbs going off, and he started to realize that he could take what was in this mirror of his financial statement and take those assets and apply them in different ways, and also build on them. And I would say also, part of the conversation was in the military there is a unique skill set that comes from that, not just the military and fighting side of things, but also the camaraderie, the organization, the execution of orders, the framework of a team, and he had that as well. And so those, as far as what we were identifying as assets on his human capital balance sheet, you could really start to see that in his eyes that he knew that there was probably application in other companies. So these are just examples really of the following. If you're showing up in the morning to a place that a profession or an office that you don't enjoy, that you don't find fulfillment, right? You don't have to be there. And I would say the more we sacrifice that dynamic for making an income and making money, the more it affects everything else around us. So the idea is to really identify what is this skill set that I have and where is it valuable, where it would be on my terms, or it would be in another company that did have a good culture, that did have good trajectory as far as upward movement is concerned. All right, so this is how it comes down to strategy. Now, so the idea, really the idea behind this context is to show you that because of the world that we live in, there's so much opportunity to take advantage of technology that exists, take advantage of how the workplace is evolving. And so right now, I would say the predominant financial strategy that most individuals participate in is a retirement plan or a 401k. And this is, I interviewed the guy, Ted Benna, who he was the first one to actually use the 401k as a financial planner, and his history is amazing because it was never intended to be what it has become today. And I would say, right now individuals, right, are in this very risky position associated with their investments, specifically their retirement accounts, because right now, based on what the stock market is doing, it's highly leveraged. There's lots of manipulation, and looking at all the stimulus that has occurred over the last couple of years, right? It's one of those things where the misallocation of resources, the malinvestment is very evident in a lot of different ways. And, it's one of those things where some numbers don't make sense. Now, is there going to be a correction? Who knows? But at the same time, the risk is really associated with those that have the bulk to lose, which in this case are those that have pensions as well as retirement accounts, because the majority are held inside of mutual funds. The majority of investments are in mutual funds. So I'm not going to get into really the 401k side of things. If you want to learn, really the analytics and why we believe what we believe regarding retirement accounts and deferred compensation vehicles like a 401k or an IRA, you can go to our website. We have tons of free tutorials that you can listen to and learn. That's paradigmlife.net. And so what I'm going to segue into is our philosophy really dates back to what was the traditional financial planning of 100 years ago. And individuals would not save inside of a 401k. They would not save inside of mutual funds because they didn't exist back then. What they saved into was insurance vehicles, into the insurance industry. The insurance industry had a much bigger presence at that period of time than they do today. And really, it was because of a lot of the tax reform and inflation, as well as some of the participation by the Federal Reserve in stimulating the economy. I'm not going to get into that history either, but really in the late 70s leading up into the late 80s with a lot of the tax reform during the Reagan era, that is where a lot of this change took place. And it basically pushed out insurance companies as being the predominant place in which Americans stored wealth and made way for Wall Street. And that's, you guys can imagine, well, you guys know, you're experiencing it, every headline today, experiencing what is going on in Wall Street. And so the idea for us is that we date back and really utilize a vehicle as a foundation of a financial strategy that's using insurance. And this insurance vehicle is designed a specific way, and we use it a specific way. So unlike a 401k, which you cannot access if you are employed without borrowing against it and being subject to terms, it's a vehicle that not only is earning interest and is gaining value with characteristics of a savings account, okay, where you can't lose any money. Okay, you also have access to using a loan provision that comes with this, and this is where it comes down to an investment in you as your greatest asset. So I wrote down a few things that I would say have been beneficial to me, but what I'll do is I'll segue into a book that I've referenced a few times, which is The Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. And I had the opportunity to have dinner with Tim a few months ago, and it was an enlightening conversation. It was a several-hour conversation and dinner, and very enlightening individual, very motivating individual, and what he's been able to crank out as far as work is concerned, like books and so forth, is just incredible. But in the book, in The Tribe of Mentors, what Tim did is he sent out 20 questions to some of the most influential people that are out there. Richard Branson, Jimmy Fallon, and a whole host of other people. And he asked them these 20 questions. And in those 20 questions, not all of them, not each of the people that received this email answered the question, but they answered some of them. And there was one in particular that probably everybody answered, which was, what has been your best investment? And without fail, every single one of those people never answered outside of something that they did. Not an investment like a mutual fund or a property or a business, but them. Personal development, investing in them, investing in opportunities, and it's just amazing that it's a reoccurring theme. And then I look at, really Warren Buffett. I watched a documentary of his a few months ago on a plane ride home, and one of the only things that he hangs in his office is not, all the accolades that he has and honorary degrees that he has, but he hangs in his office a certificate by the Dale Carnegie Institute. Dale Carnegie Institute, which is one of the first personal development courses long ago. but he shows that as his best investment. So how can you follow suit? How can you, instead of using a 401k and using retirement accounts, how could you invest in yourself? Well, here's how. So instead of making investment into a 401k or an IRA or Roth IRA, okay, where it is a very single dimensional account and investment based on something that you rarely have control over, you invest in something that's not going to lose money, something that is, really time tested over well over 100 years. Okay, you use it to grow your wealth. But then the loan provision that they are able to really give you from day one without any penalty or consequences, you can use that to invest in yourself. So let's say that you put, $10,000 into this per year. That $10,000 is going to grow. It's going to earn interest. It's going to be interest that's tax-free, and you have access to it. So what that means is that you could take a loan from the insurance company at a very low interest rate, and you can invest in something that is going to develop you personally. And I'll give you some things that I've done that I've seen massive returns from. So back in 2011. I re-linked up with a relationship in the real estate investing world with a podcast called The Real Estate Guys Radio. And Robert and Russell, I hadn't known at the time, but they've become really great friends of mine and huge supporters of me, and I'm infinitely grateful for them. And they were kind of coming out of a difficult time. I mean, it was a financial crisis, and real estate got hammered, and so they were kind of getting back on their feet. And we were sponsoring their podcast, which was a stretch in and of itself. But they were receiving money from us, month in and month out. And it finally occurred to them, wow, maybe we should probably go up and see what these, or contact these guys so we can find out, exactly what they're doing. So they invited me out to San Jose, California. I was on their podcast back in, I think it was fall of 2011. And maybe we can link that podcast. That'd be cool. I don't even want to listen to it, but it'd be pretty funny. Yeah, so you can find it. But it was amazing. It was like serendipity. These guys are amazing. We share a very similar philosophy, and they after this was about a month later, they invited me to be a faculty member on the Real Estate Guys Summit at Sea, Investor Summit at Sea, which is essentially like a longer than week cruise. Where you just get aboard with 100, 150. They've had upwards of 200 people, all investors, where you learn about investing, you learn about the economy, you learn about financial strategy, and so forth. And there are people from all over the world. There are people from New Guinea, from the UK, from other Europe. It's pretty amazing. I met some lifelong friends to this event, but it's expensive, and it was expensive for me. The faculty actually had to pay, so I paid an amount that I didn't think that I had, and I went to this place, and I stretched with Cynthia because we were supposed to do like a little getaway. And I convinced her to go on this cruise with a bunch of strangers talking about investment. And at the time, she was super mad at me, but we became really good friends with a lot of people on this cruise, and a lot of business relationships, a lot of investment opportunities have come from it. And if it was a $10,000 expense, I've probably made millions off of it because of that amazing opportunity. And that is a perfect example of an investment in human life value, which is if you are able to capitalize on these type of insurance policies, we call them wealth maximization accounts, that it's growing, it's earning interest, it's doing what your retirement account is going to do anyway, what an investment is going to do anyway, but taking a loan from it, investing in something that is going to increase your network, increase your knowledge, increase your motivation. Those are invaluable things if you really think about it. And I would say, the most valuable thing I have in my life is my relationships. And, really when it comes to business, that's what it is, your reputation and your relationships. And you never know at these events what you're going to find. Another event that I went to a couple years ago was Business Mastery by Tony Robbins, which was an incredible event. There's thousands of people there. You have this this guy that's not human, really talking and motivating you to become better, have your business get better. And it was really expensive too, but it was this idea that I had so many breakthroughs. I have, dozens of pages of notes, and I still refer back to them as far as the goals that I set for myself, the purpose that I have for my business and for my personal life. And it was, really a transformational event for me. Now, you look at it as an expense, okay, but I look at it as an investment. Most people, I would say, look at these different events, look at personal development, look at courses, right, as these big expenses. But they are some of the best investments that you can make if you look at the world through the mirror of a financial statement and really understand where money comes from, understand where assets come from, which is ultimately within the value of people. All right, now, obviously, those are very high ticket events, and most people can't, do that. And I would say that's just an example. Right now, we live in a world where there's so much information out there on anything. I guarantee that every single challenge, which I look at as an opportunity within a business, within the economy, within a relationship, within an investment, there is a solution to that. And I would say that those solutions, if you don't know how to provide a solution, you have the capacity to learn how to provide the solution. And so what I would say is, if that's true, and test me on it, challenge me on it if you want, but if that's true, now it's a matter of going out and learning whatever skill set is necessary to actually solve the problem. And I would say it comes down to a company that is a few different issues. So looking at the experience that I've had peering into companies, I look at really some fundamental challenges. I would say one of the first challenges is sales, right? In order for a business to actually make any money, they have to sell something. And there's no business that's not going to turn down the opportunity to sell more. So understanding the principles of sales, I think, is profound. And the best, I would say, personal development around sales that I've ever experienced isn't, a Dale Carnegie. It isn't a Jack Canfield. It isn't a Zig Ziglar. Although those are valuable. I would say the best course that I've ever taken is from David Sandler, and he's passed away. But David Sandler has this methodology that is profound, and you can get onto Sandler.com and learn about him. There's local franchise different trainings now, but I consider it, and my good friend Tim Francis, who's motivational speaker, business coach, he went to it recently. And it's, you can follow him on Instagram, and he has totally changed the way in which he's looking at sales and seeing the opportunity there. But Sandler Sales is one of the best, I would say, courses there. The next thing I would say is you can't sell anything unless people know about it, which leads to marketing. And, in the marketing world, man, marketing, it changes daily. It's pretty amazing. Social media has totally opened up ways in which people can transact. You have crazy stuff that you guys probably aren't even aware of that's going on right now that marketers are using to get messaging in front of you. I'll use a creepy one. So within certain apps, right, you have essentially, with the download of the app, given permission to people to track you. So they can actually geolocate your phone, and when you pull up near a Starbucks, or you pull up near a Lowe's, or you pull up near a McDonald's, they know you're coming, and they notify you, right? And even with Starbucks has this artificial intelligence, which is amazing. It's they track you, but then they learn your routines, and they know when you go and get coffee, and they ping you right when you're getting up, saying, hey, should we order your what's a famous coffee beverage, a triple non-fat yogurt latte or pumpkin latte, I don't know, whatever. It's one of those things where they know that, right? And it's so creepy. But it's the same thing with Amazon, right? Amazon pre-ships things you haven't bought yet, right? Anyway, my point behind the technology is, I don't even remember what my point was. Oh, it was marketing. So the idea is marketing is changing so quickly. I would say it's impossible, especially for a decent sized business, 100 person or more business, to keep up with all the trends. But using resources, my good friend Mike Dillard has some amazing courses that teach marketing. So you can go to MikeDillard.com. He also has a podcast called Self-Made Man, which is amazing. Some of the guests he has on there are incredible. But also, digitalmarketer.com, Ryan Dice's company, they have some amazing resources on there. So it's one of those things where the resources out there to really keep up on marketing, if that's your thing, right, to help improve yourself, but also help improve your company. And then let's see a few other things. I would say culture is another big thing, and I've talked on the show before about some of the cultural changes we made at Paradigm last year, many of which were very challenging and difficult. And but at the same time, the environment is being created where people have made lifelong relationships without a doubt, and it's really coming into its own. It's really cool to see. But culture is a big thing. If there's a toxic culture at your company, learning culture, learning how it forms, reading Cameron Herold or reading or getting into Simon Sinek and the number of videos that he has out there, I think you'll start to see ideas associated with what you can do practically to impact your culture. And all in all, if people show up to a workplace happier, more fulfilled, excited to see you, you're going to get better results. And that skill right there, I would say, is one of the most valuable assets. So how you have like those, like it's crazy, like I haven't done it yet, but the 23andMe, you have these tests to show you like what your DNA is and where you come from, and people are all surprised that they think they were from England, but they're really from Scotland or Ireland, which was the arch enemy. So you have no idea what happened there. But I would say some Irish girls like some English guys. But it's one of those, it's one of those things where people are fascinated with, their ancestry. They're fascinated with where they came from, what makes up who they are today. And I would say there are ways in which you can peer in, not necessarily into your, your heritage and your DNA, but you can get into, really who you are as an individual, how you're wired, what you love to do, your strengths, whether it's an analytic or whether it's a driver. I would say, Colby is a really amazing, test that shows your it shows your natural tendencies, your natural gravitation towards certain activities, and your resistance to others. And I'd also say StrengthsFinder is another one, Myers-Briggs. But these tests all tell a story about who you are, and I think who you are is also very similar to DNA, right? DNA is a function of like all the the people that came before us, right? Our forefathers, our ancestors, even those cave people that are part of our DNA. You really look at the makeup of our physical body, but there's also a very significant presence of our personality, our psychology, based on some very similar factors. And you can learn not like where the personalities came from. I mean, whoever cracks that code would be pretty amazing. But you can at least learn who you are today. You can learn what your traits are, what your skills are, and there's lots of placement associated with that as far as the ideal professions, the ideal positions, because frankly, you could be, a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant or a highly paid, professional and just hate what you're doing, right? And it's because your natural tendencies, your natural desires, your natural skill sets don't align with that profession, right? So it can also help in that regard. But I would also say learning more about you, learning about your natural abilities, your unique abilities, your internal genius is also really powerful. And that's about it in that regard. I'll comment on the book and then we will wrap up and my daughter can get off of Instagram and start doing her homework. So the book's going to come out probably in March or April, and the book's called Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. Really the reason why I chose that title is because of the financial strategies that we teach, in essence, put you in the position to not lose. And I would say right now there are many people losing the battle of personal finance. One, because of the, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the exploitation of Wall Street in regards to, convincing people that, that's the best place to put money. But also I would say the credit industry, which is actually the same industry, that are, really using usurious business practices to lure people in to very high interest and trapping them in this, vicious cycle. And, it's one of those things where I know that there are solutions for people to win, and it's not just a function of the financial tools that you use or products that you use. It's a function of who you are. And I would say the best investments is what I've explained today. And that's why we really prefer as our foundation, right? And even a lot of financial podcasts, they don't get this. It's all talking about cryptocurrency and blockchain and this type of insurance policy or this type of ETF or this type of this. It's like people don't get it. It's like financial products are one of the relying on them for your future is one of the riskiest things you can do. Now, it makes money for the people that are selling them, okay, but at the same time, it puts you in a tremendous amount of risk because you're the only one that loses in the end if they don't work out the way that they're sold. And looking at what I've discovered, which is, a byproduct of mentors that came long before I came around. They're the ones that inspire me to really look at the framework of a personal economy, the framework of financial freedom, which has to have a foundation that is safe, secure, that is bulletproof. I'm not going to use safety and security because I hate those words, but bulletproof. The bulletproof idea is that it has the time-tested history, it has the math, it has the performance, it has the structure that really creates this psychology that is impossible to create without it. And then the idea is really to use yourself as the number one asset to analyze investments, but also to build who you are, which is where the most money is ever going to come from, in my opinion. And so the book, and really, it's really meant to show you ways in which you can structure your financial life to live it to the fullest, to find that achievement, to find that enjoyment, which so many people today can do. And I don't know, I think the book, ultimately, my goal is for it to be a tool to create that kind of faith in the individual so that they do pursue those things that, that they feel inclined to do, but they just don't have the gumption yet. That's my ultimate goal. So, all right, well, this is a good conclusion to episode 3 of the first season of the Wealth Standard podcast, focusing on life. And next week, you do not want to miss an amazing man, an amazing business owner, a guy that, over the last just 2 years actually 3 years, has built over 10,000 units of apartment buildings. He has a 350-person company, and it has won like best employer for the last couple of years in Arizona. And just an amazing individual, Ken McElroy, one of the Rich Dad Advisors, author of ABCs of Real Estate, ABCs of Property Management, and I think the ABCs of Advanced Real Estate. But anyway, he's an amazing individual. I've known him for years, and I can't wait for you to see that interview and that video. So make sure you stick around next week. Also, if you're a first-time listener, go back and listen to the first couple of episodes, one with Garrett Gunderson, the second being me flying solo, talking about an incredible book called The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. And we'll continue on with another few episodes of life, and I can't wait for you to see what's in store. So that's it for us today. We will talk to you next week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for joining us as the Wealth Standard Podcast spends all of 2018 celebrating life, liberty, and property. Be sure to leave us a review on iTunes, and we'll see you on the next one.